Hello. Well, the plane that was supposed to be taking 130 illegal immigrants to a processing place in Rwanda has been cancelled, or rather the flight has been cancelled. At first it was 130 and then it was, 111, then it was 50. It got down to, I think, 7, and then it was cancelled altogether. This is the BBC report on it. Rwanda asylum flight cancelled after legal action. You see, that's what caused the problem. There were a whole load of legal impediments to the flight actually going ahead. Not only through private actions being brought on behalf of single passengers in that flight, but also the European Court of Human Rights was interfering. And this has caused Neil Oliver on GB News much to talk about, because he says that, and I agree with this, that plane was nothing but a piece of theatre. At the very most, it could take 130 people, and let's face it, there are thousands coming in every month. We'd need all the aeroplanes in the country to ferry them over to Rwanda. So the whole thing was a huge show. And I'm quite sure that Ms. Patel knew that there would be some legal actions. Even if the plane had taken off, it wouldn't have been full. And Neil Oliver says it failed because it was meant to fail. And he suggests that the elite in some way does not want to stop all this illegal immigration. Well, I'm not sure that he's right there. Here, I'll read the BBC report. The first flight due to take asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda was cancelled minutes before takeoff after legal rulings on Tuesday evening. Up to 7 people, seven out of all of the groups. I mean, outside Linton on Ouse, there's an RAF, a disused RAF station, and as I said, it's disused because we're not. We don't need soldiers or airmen anymore. You know, everything's quite safe. Anyway, there's 1,400 young men in that camp. Or I don't know if they're there or if they're supposed to be going there, but that was what it was, 1,400. And they were going to, at best, deport 130. You know, there's something really wrong here. I can quite see Neil Oliver's disquiet about this. To 7 people, and it whittled down to 7, had been expected to be removed to the East African country, but the flight was stopped after a late intervention from the European Court of Human Rights led to fresh challenges in the UK courts. Home Secretary Priti Patel said she was disappointed, but added preparation for the next flight begins now. However, James Wilson from campaign group Detention Action said the rare intervention from the European Court of Human Rights shows how potentially dangerous the Rwanda removals are. No, I disagree with that. The fact that the European Court of Human Rights had interfered does not show it's dangerous to remove illegal immigrants. What it shows is that the European Court of Human Rights is prepared to tell Britain what to do. And we can never know, because apparently the judge who gave the ruling that the flight was illegal is not named. So we have an unaccountable legal authority. We don't know who he is, and he may not even exist. I mean, he may exist as a name or something, or it may be something that was cooked up by the spite of a couple of countries whom I shall leave nameless, who don't like the fact that Britain got out of the EU and will do absolutely anything to make life difficult. There's a fuss about the Northern Ireland Protocol as well, which Britain is trying to divest itself from. So, and that Northern Ireland Protocol, by the way, is just spite as well. And they've been, I think, in the past month, they've passed 4,000 laws, or rather since January. 4,000 laws to do with Northern Ireland, restricting various things that Britain could do. 4,000, you'd think, that Britain is living rent-free inside their heads. They can think of nothing else. So while all this Ukraine fuss was going on, they were using their mighty imaginations to think of nitpicking rules they could put into Northern Ireland. So when they come up with a legal impediment to Britain removing illegal immigrants into Britain's own borders, our independent borders, then I don't believe that it had anything to do with law, and it had more, well, it might have had a small bit to do with law and a lot more to do with spite. Okay, so that was the EHCR. So James Wilson, you're wrong. It's amazing how stupid intelligent people can be, isn't it, sometimes? And I'm not excluding myself. He said the court had recognised no one should be forced onto a plane until the policy was fully scrutinised in a High Court hearing next month. This is rather interesting. No one should be forced into a plane without... but in there on the European continent, people are being forced to submit to medical interventions. I'm not going to say which one because I'll get this video demonetized again. I have to submit to certain medical interventions against their will in many cases, and they're saying you can't get into a plane against your will. It's interesting how selective these things can be, isn't it? The Rwanda asylum plan, announced by the government in April, sees some asylum seekers who cross the channel to the UK given a one-way ticket to Rwanda to claim asylum there instead. The government said the scheme would discourage others from crossing the English Channel, and it might do if the British can get on with it. Okay, and the Boeing 767 cost £500,000 to charter and was supposed to take off at 22:30 from a military airport in Wiltshire, but judgment from the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, the anonymous judgment halting the deportation of one of the men, arrived just after 19:30 and triggered a series of legal challenges in London courts. By 22:15, all the passengers had been removed from the plane, which then returned to Spain. It's amazing. You can just imagine them sitting there, something like, one of these reality shows. In fact, why don't we have a reality show? We'll just pile illegal immigrants into a plane and film them as bit by bit, one legal challenge after the other gets them off until there's one very nervous passenger left. The Strasbourg Human Rights Court, which still counts the UK as a member, rather than the European Union, said an Iraqi man known as KN faced a real risk of irreversible harm if he remained on the flight. Well, they're taking him to Iraq. No, they're taking him to Rwanda. That's quite a distance from Iraq. But he was an illegal immigrant. That's the point. A legal immigrant who will suffer irreversible harm. Well, we should be taking care of that. But it's amazing how many illegal immigrants are going to suffer irreversible, horrible harm if they're not given asylum in Britain. There are lots of people. I should think every single woman in Afghanistan has the right to claim legal entry into Britain under the irreversible harm rule. And there is a limit. Whereas the High Court in London had found that KN could be returned to the UK if his bid to overturn the Rwanda transportation policy succeeded, the European Court of Human Rights says there was no legally enforceable mechanism to ensure he could come back from East Africa. Okay, now I think one of the problems, and it is a serious problem, is democracy and the media. And we've simply got to think of how we deal with that. Do you remember that baby, the dead body of that poor 3-year-old child who was drowned on a boat that went down going from Turkey, I think, to Greece? Well, the fact is that the family had been settled in Turkey. And they might not have had a marvellous life, but they were settled there. And I believe that the UN and the EU are paying Turkey to look after these migrants. So it's not like they were completely destitute either. But they decided, the father decided, or parents decided that they should go into pastures new. And the mother and son were on the boat that went down. And the father was, weeping and crying. He was the one who made the decision to send them. But you see, all we got was that awful, sad picture of a dead body of a baby, and nobody likes to do that, you'd have to have a heart of stone to think that was a good idea. But that is the problem, because if a government, say, goes to the onto the high seas and says, all right, you're illegal immigrants, go back to France, or we're going to shoot you, that wouldn't play well. The optics would be pretty dreadful in the newspapers. And that's the problem. Now, we have to decide as a society what we are prepared to stand for. First of all, do we want a stronger army, or do we want better medical attention, better bus services? Well, we want both. Well, we can't have both. But the problem is, you see, you put the money into more soldiers so that RAF place next to Linton on Ouse is fully staffed with airmen and not refugees. Okay, so you've got the money going there, and then the press runs a dreadfully sad story about this little old lady that spends her day on the bus because it's warmer on the bus than in her house and she can't afford the fuel. You see, we do have this problem. It's a serious problem, and nobody's actually talking about that so much. But the fact is, we pay our politicians to make hard and ugly decisions for us because we don't want to. We want to feel the heart. And we're supposed to be paying our politicians to make the decisions, and they're not doing that. They want to feel the heart as well, and that's the problem. And we have to think now. It's not, as Neil Oliver said, some sort of conspiracy of the elite. No, it's the impotence of the elite in the face of the fact that they want to be nice. And we are electing them. And so we are actually telling them to be nice as well. So nobody really knows what they're doing. I think maybe that's the reason for the recent UFO hysteria. They don't call it UFO anymore, do they? They call it unidentified aerial phenomenon, phenomena, UAPs. Anyway, whatever. There's been quite a fuss about it recently, and I am convinced that it's, I don't know whether there are visitors from other planets or not. I think that's definitely yet to be proved. But what I do think is that there is this desire among us. We want to make all the right decisions. We want all the kiddies to be jumping about in rainbow-filled meadows, picking buttercups and all the rest of it. But we know that can't be done. So we're desperate for somebody to come from somewhere and take charge. Well, anyway, that's just a psychological side issue. Okay, well, I'm granniopteryx. And to be found on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Please like this video, share it, make sure you're subscribed, click that subscribe button, even if you think you are, and sign up to @granniopteryx on Twitter, Gab or Parler, because I'll always let you know when I've uploaded a new video on one of those platforms, so you won't miss a video. Right. Oh, and please contribute to the channel if you can. It's very useful for me. So there you are. Like, that does the algorithm. Share, that does the algorithm. Subscribe, that does the algorithm. And contribute, that doesn't do the algorithm. That just shoes my horses. Okay, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.